Ari Aster's genre-jumping neo-western Eddington is the best cinematic exploration of the COVID-19 era in America, which it accomplishes through the lens of a satirical black comedy. Starring an A-list cast led by Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal, Eddington examines America circa May 2020 from the perspective of the residents of a small New Mexico town. Joaquin Phoenix stars as Joe Cross, an embittered sheriff who denies the gravity of the COVID-19 pandemic and resents the restrictions it's placed upon his town. In his frustration, he opts to run for mayor against the incumbent Ted Garcia, Pascal, whose interests align with following the statewide and countrywide mandates while simultaneously subjecting the town to a tech firm's invasion. While it debuted to lower Rotten Tomatoes scores than Aster's first two movies, Eddington has received praise from critics for representing many different viewpoints and perspectives from the specific time period when COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement were at their most combustible. Although the movie has been labeled as overlong by many, there's no denying Aster's unique style of social commentary is gripping. Eddington is an effective satire that looks at all angles of the COVID-19 era. It pulls no punches in its satirical analysis of COVID-19 America. Joe Cross, Joaquin Phoenix, getting a PCR test in Eddington. Image via A24. With Eddington, Ari Aster has crafted the most inspired and effective feature film that we've seen so far about the heart of the pandemic. While there are many admirable aspects about the movie, perhaps the most striking is Aster's refusal to pull any of his punches with any perspective. Eddington truly doesn't take sides in regard to any of the events depicted. From mask-wearing and performative protests to the rise of unfettered social media surveillance, Eddington effectively satirizes the intensity and tumult of that precise time frame in American history. Every viewpoint is represented, and in some cases exaggerated to great effect, but no party is seen as right or righteous in their stance. While it pivots to an action thriller in the final third, Eddington acts as the first truly modern-feeling neo-western. Even shows like Yellowstone and Taylor Sheridan's Secret American Frontier trilogy sometimes don't feel quite real, with their sweeping mountain vistas and desert landscapes. The town itself in Eddington feels like a real modern setting, with the empty streets and shuttered businesses approximating the old western ghost towns. The midtown standoffs between Phoenix and Pascal are clearly meant to evoke the gunslinger showdowns of Western's past, and Clifton Collins Jr.'s homeless character Lodge satisfies the mysterious vagrant stranger trope. Eddington may not wind up popular enough to usher in a new era of ultramodern westerns, especially given how much of its audience it will likely alienate. However, it does feel like a benchmark in what the modern western movie setting actually looks and feels like on the big screen. There are only a few other major COVID-centric movies. Eddington is the most high-profile by far. It's only been 5 years since the very time period that Eddington depicts, but it still feels as though there should have been more movies set in such a volatile time period rife with different stories and viewpoints. The Hollywood writers and SAG-AFTRA strikes undoubtedly played a role, along with a likely unwillingness to reflect upon what was such a dark time period for many. While Eddington is no doubt an effective examination of America during the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, it simply hasn't had much competition on the big screen. There have been a number of excellent documentaries on the various aspects of that time period, but very few feature-length movies. There have been a few major movies released on streaming that deal with the pandemic in some way, shape, or form. Most were released that way due to ongoing theater restrictions at the time of their production and release, and they do cover a range of genres. HBO Max, at the time known as Max, released 2 major movies direct to streaming in lockdown: the 2021 romantic comedy heist movie starring Anne Hathaway and Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Kimi, Steven Soderbergh's 2022 claustrophobic thriller starring Zoe Kravitz. Peacock released the rather on-the-nose slasher movie Sick in January 2023 to positive reviews. However, none of the major movies that have been released related to COVID have attempted to capture the fractured psyche of an entire nation the way that Eddington does. Each of the aforementioned movies is self-contained, and deals with the pandemic in how we respond to isolation, fear of illness, and monotony. Eddington takes the first truly bold and daring swing at the widespread paranoia, rage, and frustration in the country, and really the world at large. It paints everyone's struggle as equally relevant, whether you felt oppressed by being forced to mask or threatened by those who refuse to do so. In that way, Eddington is by far the best movie we've gotten about the pandemic, and frankly it'll be hard to beat.